And this is part two of another real life story. And this is describing some of the how difficult it could be in my early to mid 20s, trying to get established as an adult, having not found anything at college that was to become a vocation for me. Following the craziness of our landlord Al in Plainfield, New Jersey, right across from the public pool, as a matter of fact. And I had to get out that night. And the elders at First Christian Assembly in Plainfield, where I was attending, and at times playing music and participating in Bible studies and prayer before the service on Sunday and men's retreats, etc. They reached out and they put me in touch with Ed and Louine Eck. And Ed worked at the jewelry store part-time, and therefore they knew about Ed and bingo. So I lived with Ed and Louine and a couple of other boarders at the Belvedere Avenue house for quite a while, and a couple of the boarders were part of a German brotherhood called the Brotherhood of Jesus, and they were very devout and wore brotherhood-type robes and all that stuff, but they knew the scriptures and they really knew the Lord, and I had great respect for the Brotherhood of Jesus. And I also met some others who lived at a different place, and they were cool too. And one of the brothers was called Brother Moses. He himself, prior to becoming a brother, he was a Jew from Germany, and he had a real conversion experience. So he was a completed Jew. He was a reborn Jewish person, and his love for the Lord was extraordinary. And occasionally I still play a song that he wrote and that I learned. Ultimately, he died at an early age, and I don't remember why. But somewhere along that time, shortly after I got, I guess, living with Ed and Louine, I picked up a job working at United National Bank. And so there was 3 weeks of training, and I was driving my 1962 Rambler, which I had bought after my 66 Oldsmobile station wagon got hit, absolute T-boned at an intersection in Plainfield, which was an interesting story too. Okay, I'm on my way to the beginning of the third week of training at United National Bank, and it's a beautiful morning in the spring, and I'm driving, heading there. I'm not in a hurry. Speed limit's 30. I was probably doing about 30. And suddenly at an intersection, a blind intersection, because there was a sidewalk and a tall building right there. You could not see what was coming through the intersection. I had the right of way. I'm going through, and suddenly a woman coming from my right blasts right through her stop sign. Apparently she could not see it because the sun had just come up over there. She blasts through, she hits my Oldsmobile directly between the front and the back door, complete T-bone. And as I saw her car approaching, everything went into slow motion, almost like click, 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 boom. And I watched as the door caved in, and I watched the seat fold up next to me, all in slow motion, and I saw her Volkswagen peel off to the right and slam into a telephone pole, and I'm like, wow. And as my attention turns from her over to driving, and I look forward, and my car is going diagonally across the intersection, head on into a guy who was coming the other way. I have always worn seatbelts long before they were ever mandated. I think it goes all the way back to like 1964. My father had a Buick Electra, and I always wore the seatbelt. So I was what, 11, 12 years old when I started wearing seatbelts. This particular day, her car hitting me and driving me diagonally through the intersection, I would have most likely gone over to the, if I was not wearing a seatbelt, I would have gone over to the passenger side, and then when I hit the oncoming car, probably would have gone through the windshield. I was locked in by my seatbelt. Everything in the back of my station wagon flew forward. Even my glasses fell off, and all of my paperwork for the new job and my lunch and all kinds of stuff went flying. I got out and walked over to check on the lady and wound up praying with her because she was only semi-conscious. And I went over to check on the guy who'd been hit head on. And stupid me, I walked the rest of the way to work. Duh. Anyway, that was very interesting. For a while, I was riding my bike to work every day. And then eventually I bought a 1962 Rambler from the guy across the street. What I didn't know was that there were holes in the floorboards. So I was driving to Kendall Park, New Jersey from Plainfield. I'm guessing it's probably 25 miles or so, in a rainstorm. The holes in the floorboards were behind the front wheels. I didn't know. I had no idea. They were covered by the flooring, by the carpeting. I'm driving to go plan some music for Karen and Joe O'Hala's upcoming wedding. I was going to be the primary musician. And as I go to stop for a stoplight or for a stop sign, slosh. Ultimately, I had 6 or 7 inches of water, mostly in the back, which is where it all ran to. But that's how I discovered that I had a problem. The following day, I ripped all the carpets out and discovered what the issue was and did my best to fix it. While living with Ed and Louine, I would occasionally do concerts. I also got picked up by the Children of Light, which was a local Christian band, and I was their lead guitarist and one of their lead singers. We had marvelous voices, and I talk about that in another real-life story. Debbie Legg worked the soundboard for Children of Light, so we knew each other through that Christian music group. I started working part-time at O'Connor's Beef and Ale because the pay scale over at United National Bank was insufficient, even though I was living really inexpensively with Ed and Louine. If I'd been living on my own, I would have been, and I did check this out, I would have been eligible for food stamps. That's how well United National Bank was paying. And I understand most low-level bank jobs have that same problem even today. So I started working part-time at night at O'Connor's Beef and Ale. Ultimately, I was being considered as a junior manager for the bank, but it deservedly went to a lady who had been there a lot longer than I had. And ultimately, I wound up full-time at O'Connor's Beef and Ale. I left the bank because I could make more money as a waiter. That's a disgrace. Somewhere along the line, I started dating Debbie. That's also in another real-life story. Ultimately, Ed and Louine, who almost became surrogate parents, even though they were only, Louine was 9 years older than me, and Ed, I think, was 14 or 15 years older than me. But they were somewhat, the stabilizing effect of these people was so helpful in my immature life, and I can't thank them enough. But ultimately, Ed and Louine bought an inn called the Bradley Inn up in Maine, along the coast. In fact, way out on a peninsula called Pemaquid Point. The small city at the beginning of that peninsula is Damariscotta, and Debbie and I went up there 2 or 3 times to help them get established. Ultimately, I needed to move out. They needed to sell the house in Plainfield. And again, praying, oh dear God, where do I move? What do I do? Help, please guide me. Once again, just leaning into God for the next step. A lot of my life has been that way. What's the next step, Lord? What's the next step? Please guide me. Make this work. Bring honor to your name. Somebody that we knew from First Christian Assembly and who had worked at Bonnie Bray was John Tanner. John Tanner and his wife, Lois, they lived in Plainfield, obviously. John Tanner got a job ultimately through his father working with New Jersey Transit, the trains. And the Lord connected me one time with John, and the next thing I know, I'm working for New Jersey Transit. I was ticket office relief, vacation relief, which meant that I would go and cover a ticket office when somebody was out. I was also in the same craft as towermen who give signals and switches to trains. This is ancient from the 1800s when ticket offices frequently were out in remote places and they would receive telegraph messages to be handed up to the trains as the trains were going by. So somehow ticket offices and towerman skills were all in the same unionized craft. Ticket office, except for getting up as early as you had to. Ticket office work, I really liked keeping inventory, keeping the office, dealing with the customers, dealing with money, dealing with monthly reports, no problem. Handling the pressure of giving signals and switches to the trains, particularly if it's a passenger train, which is a very high priority, you don't want to screw up. I screwed up a few times. The pressure is astounding. And possibly the worst thing that I ever did, I had a 2,000 ton, no. Anyway, well over 100 coal cars. And this was out in Manville, New Jersey. I can't think of the name of the tower there, but a huge coal train was coming in, and it was my job to get them through the, what do you call it? Where there's a whole bunch of tracks. I needed to get them through the yard. So I was doing my best to understand what the dispatcher was saying over the wire. And when the train got down there, the other end of the track that we put them on was blocked. Here is like 200 car train, thousands and thousands and thousands of tons of coal, and now the guy has to back up. Tremendous pressure. I didn't like being a towerman at all. I enjoyed ticket office work, but that's partly because I was dealing with people, and I can handle people. Anyway, at some point, I needed to move out of Ed and Louine's and praying, and lo and behold, found an opportunity over a 3-car garage on an 8-acre estate in Plainfield, where this couple that Debbie and I knew, they were caretakers on this estate. And so they were leaving to, I don't know, buy a house or whatever they were doing. And so the owners of the estate brought Debbie and I on as caretakers of their 8-acre estate, which was right on the border between Plainfield and Scotch Plains. We lived there for free until the original owners sold the house to a younger couple who didn't need help with the estate. They needed more help with money coming in, so they were very gracious and charged us very little. And she and I got married, and we even had our first child while living in over top of a 3-car garage in Plainfield, New Jersey. What was the name of the? Can't remember the name of the street, but we lived there. And then Debbie got pregnant a second time, but we didn't know it. And so we were stripping and then staining a crib for Julie, who was growing up. She was over a year old now. She needed her own place, and unbeknownst to us, the stripper, the chemical stripper, caused the baby that was in Debbie's belly to miscarry. And we were still in the 3-bedroom, and that got us realizing that we couldn't really stay there if we had more kids. So that's when we started looking for a place to live, but hopefully one we could buy, because I had been making pretty good money working for the railroad, and we had put quite a bit away. We had a substantial down payment back when homes didn't cost $500,000. So we started looking around, and a number of months later, we bought a Cape Cod style house in the little town in western New Jersey, of the town of Asbury. Very rural place, and it was a Cape Cod type of house that we bought for $69,900. And of course, with a substantial down payment, we did well. Anyway, that brings you up to date with how difficult my early 20s were. All right, thanks. Thanks for listening.